Poverty. It changed the human spirit. How did they break free? Government can't solve these problems, but people can. Escape from Poverty wants to help. Guiding people like Amy, who makes pralines.
I have a dream of not only having a candy store in Lafayette, but in the surrounding areas and eventually go international.
Families like Carol and Kelly.
I think I would like to someday become a chorus teacher.
One of my dreams is to become a teacher, a basketball coach, and a football coach.
Recovering addicts like Greg.
It's just amazing about life. You know, life, you never know what the day gonna bring. You never know what the day gonna bring. And you know, that's some of my goals. Some of my goals, long-term goals, is to help others, be of service to others, and to own my own business.
Single moms like Tyra.
I would like to eventually own my own business. And what? I don't know. I know I'll be helping people in some sort of way, but I want to eventually work for myself.
Anybody can help somebody out of poverty.
You can too.
The people in these classes are also starring in a reality TV show. Join us as we follow their journey from poverty to success.
Our dream is to make their dreams come true.
Escape from poverty.
Escape from poverty.
Escape from poverty.
Escape from poverty is transforming my life.
Transforming my life.
Transforming my life.
It's transforming my life.
Welcome to Escape from Poverty. Tonight our class is going to be another Bible study on Joseph. It's a continuing series that we're doing. Here to teach our Bible study is Pastor John Newman. Pastor John Newman is the pastor of New Hope Church. It's a new startup church, a multicultural church over in the inner city of Lafayette, Louisiana. So John has been married for years, has a whole bunch of kids, and he's a really smart guy. That's the best introduction I give him because he's my friend. So take it away, John Newman.
Thank you, Linda. You are very kind. Well, it's good to be with everybody here tonight, and it's my privilege to look at the story of Joseph with you tonight. I love the story of Joseph. It's a great story. And we're going to be looking at Genesis 39 tonight. And so you can, if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open them up. And but actually, before we start looking at Genesis 39, I wanted to give just an idea of what a good story in general is. I think the story of Joseph is a good story, but what makes a story a good story? And then as we think about good stories, and as we think about the story of Joseph, I want us to think about having our lives be a good story. What does it take for our life to be a good story? And I think there's three things that it takes for there to be a good story. One is there has to be a good character. I mean, if you don't like the character, and if you don't care if he wins or loses or, if he succeeds, that's not going to be a good story. That's going to be a boring story. You need a good character. And usually for a good character, to be somebody who we like, it has to be somebody who's noble. Somebody who is a good person. From what we've seen of Joseph so far, how would you describe him? Is he a good character? If he was 17 when the story starts, if you were in high school with Joseph, do you think you'd like him? Was he a good guy? What do you think?
Arrogant.
A little arrogant? Yeah. What else do you see with him?
He looked like he was kind of spoiled.
A little spoiled? Yeah, a little spoiled. How do you think he'd be at school if you were at high school with him? What would he be like?
He'd be like a teacher's pet.
Yeah, he'd be a teacher's pet. So if you were in high school, he probably wouldn't be your friend, huh?
Probably not.
So early on in the story, Joseph isn't a good character. He's not a lovable guy. He's not somebody we like. And so if the character in the story starts out, and he doesn't start out to be a strong character, either over time we're going to really like him less and less and less and actually be rooting against him, and he's going to be the bad guy, the villain. Or some things change, something happens, and over the course of the story he transforms. And those are redemptive stories, where a person starts off a little rough, then they go through the school of hard knocks, and then they're changed. And that's sort of the story of Joseph. So the first thing you need for a good story is a good character. The next thing we need in a good story is tension. We got to have some obstacles. There has to be some things that come alongside the person, and we wonder, are they going to make it? You know, is this the end? Are they going to be able to overcome? What in Joseph's story, what's the obstacle that Joseph has in his story when we finished last time?
He's a prisoner. He was in prison.
Yeah.
Or a slave. He was a slave.
Yeah, and so what do we think is going to happen to him? If we hadn't already read the story, what do we think?
He's going to die in slavery.
Yeah, this is, if we were just looking at it the first time, it's like, oh, this story's over. I mean, he's sold to slavery. This is not a good thing. When your brothers sell you to the Midianites and they take you down the slave trade and they're selling you to and you're going away from your family, you think the story's over. This is bad. So there's some tension in the story. We wonder what's going to happen. I think, would you agree with me that every good story has some tension in it? Some suspense?
Mm-hmm.
Do we like tension and suspense in our stories?
No.
Why not?
Uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable?
You want things to be easy sailing.
Now, would you want to read that story? Would you want to go to the movie where everything's easy and there's no conflict and there's no fight or challenge? Would you want to go to that movie? Probably not, right? So if our life really was that way and was just, what would we miss? If there weren't challenges and obstacles.
Growth.
Growth lessons.
Yeah. I mean, those are the opportunities for us to change and be transformed. What we do, though, when we have those obstacles, we say, oh, God, just make this go away. Right? Mm-hmm. We just want it to go away. But that is the process that God wants to take us through to transform us and how He wants to work in our lives. And the third thing, so Joseph, not a good, strong character to start off with. He has some tension right now, and so that makes the story interesting. And then the last thing you need is a noble cause. Every good story has a part of it where the main character is doing something that's beyond themselves. When we start off with this story, Joseph, everything he does is about himself. Oh, guys, I'm going to be the ruler, and you guys are going to worship me. And so Joseph's whole story, he thinks he's the star of the story. He thinks he is the story. But a good, noble story, the characters are going to be focusing on something other than themselves. It could be good against evil. It could be rescuing somebody. But for us to be engaged in the story, we have to be engaged in something outside of ourselves. In our own lives, what is it like when we have difficulties and we focus on our own difficulties as opposed to if we have difficulties and we try to help other people? How does that different for us? When you've experienced that, when you've had difficulties and instead of just being stuck in your own difficulties, you go and you try to help somebody else. What's that like?
It makes you realize that your problems are not as big as you think they are.
Yeah, that's good, Tyra.
You get a sense of purpose. Maybe I went through that so I could help somebody else.
Yeah. So then some of my obstacles, some of those things are lessons, and I can impart them to other people. Makes my problems not seem so, and you don't get so stuck in where you're at. And then all of a sudden you get a heart and eyes for other people. Now Joseph doesn't have that yet, but as the story goes on, he will. So I just wanted to lay that little groundwork before we started looking at the temptation, Joseph facing temptation. So in the world of story, Joseph has a negative turn. Going from being daddy's pet, growing up in a wealthy home, being his dad's right-hand man, favored position, he has a negative turn in story world, and he's sold into slavery, and we don't know what's going to happen next. Does anybody remember in the first few verses where Joseph, where he lands? Where does his feet land when the slave traders sell him?
Oh, he's a Potiphar.
Who's Potiphar?
The ruler, king or a ruler.
Yeah, Potiphar is one of the highest ranking officials in Egypt. There's Pharaoh, who's the king, and we don't know how high up the pecking order that Potiphar is, but he is up there. And somehow, out of all the people that Joseph could have been sold to, I mean, he could have been sold to an evil guy, he could have been sold to a mean guy, but he's sold to a respected official that's one of Pharaoh's workers, one of his officials. So now the story's starting to take a positive turn. And I'll go ahead and read here, starting at verse 2. Genesis 39, verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered. Joseph prospered. And he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. And when his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes, and he became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. What does Potiphar see in Joseph?
You see the grace of God upon him. Maybe integrity.
Integrity. You know what? Let's try to list some things. I mean, let's think about this a little bit. In today's terminology, he'd be like maybe he's like working in the mailroom of a bank or a big organization, and somehow from being in the mailroom, he works himself up to be the head mail guy, and then then he's an assistant manager and a manager. He works himself all the way up to the top as he can go, and he's the #1 guy right under Potiphar, and Potiphar trusts him with everything. So how does that happen? There's 3 categories of things I want us to think about. I think that for us to have success in the world, we need 3 things in work: character, our attitudes, competence, how well we do things, and chemistry, how well we get along with people. And in terms of character, in terms of his attitudes, what kind of attitudes? We don't know, he doesn't say, but what kind of attitudes do you think Joseph would have had to be successful? Obedient.
He was a hard worker. I think hard work.
I'll put that under competence. So he's a hard worker. He's okay. Humble. Now that's going to be a switch, isn't it? Because he wasn't humble before. Now, Tyra, why would you say that he would need to be humble?
Because of his purpose in life, of his call that he had on his life, he was going to lead the people. He was going to help the people in Egypt overcome the famine. So in order to be a good ruler, he had to be humble. He couldn't be arrogant or anything like that. So.
That's good. And he had to realize that what he was doing wasn't for himself. This is for Potiphar. And so he has to put his agenda on hold and concentrate on Potiphar. That's good.
Would that be fear?
Pardon?
Would that be fear?
You know what? I would call that, I'd call that respect.
Respect?
I would say he respected authority.
Okay.
You know, you're not going to get promoted if you're always talking back to the boss, right?
Right.
And I think he had a good, healthy respect of who Potiphar was. He knew his place. He knew, I'm here to make Potiphar look good. He knew that, and he respected authority. What are some other things you think he had?
Undercompetent. I think he had leadership abilities. He's a good leader.
Why do you say that?
Because he kept rising. He was put over everything.
One thing I think that a good leader is they anticipate. They don't just do what they're told.
Right.
They anticipate what's going to happen next.
He takes initiative.
He takes initiative. We'll put that in our character, that he takes initiative. He doesn't just wait. He anticipates what his boss is going to need, and he gets it done in advance. Initiative. That's good. Anything else? How about interacting with the other servants? What kind of attitudes would he have to have there? He's going to have respect for authority for Potiphar, but how about interacting with the other guys? What kind of chemistry would he have there?
People skills?
Like, okay, like what kind of people skills? Tyra, that's good.
Maybe be able to relate to people.
Okay. And what would that look like? Relates well. Personable? Yeah, he's going to be kind. You know, he's going to get the best. If you can get the best out of a worker, you can't just. You got to be kind. You got to be encouraging. And if he wasn't that, he wouldn't have gotten promoted. He might have been a good worker, but he wouldn't have been a good boss unless he had good relational skills. That's good. Anything else you can think of that he would have?
In his character, I think we have to have integrity.
Yeah, because his boss is trusting him with everything. And that one becomes really the deal breaker for the whole rest of this story, is integrity. And Greg, I would say that of all the skills, everything, that's the number one thing. I mean, think about it. If you're a hard worker, you're a good leader, you get along well with people, but people aren't sure they can trust you, how far are you going to go? This is the number one thing. Reputation. You know, can I trust this guy? There was a movie, Courageous. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. The same guy, the same organization who did Fireproof. Yeah, the same group that did Fireproof did this story called Courageous. And one of the little episodes, a guy he'd gotten laid off 2 or 3 times, and he finally got a job again. And he worked, he got promoted. And then his boss, the owner of the company, called him into a private meeting and said, okay, I'm going to make you the overseer of the whole shipping yard. But here's what I need you to do. We're going to get 14 orders in tomorrow. I need you to report that we had 13 in. And I want you to put the other one aside on a different truck. And I need you to do that. If you can't do that for me, then you don't have a job with us here. And so I need your answer tomorrow. If you can do that for me tomorrow, you're the boss of the whole shipping department. That's tough. That's tough stuff. He had to go home. He had to think about it. And he went to the boss and the next day and he said, you know what? I thought about it and I want you to know I really love this job. I really need this job. But sir, I can't lie. And the boss looked at him and said, I told you what the consequences were if you did not do this. Do you understand that your job is in jeopardy if you don't do this? He says, yes, and I don't want my job to be in jeopardy, but I can't lie. The boss shook his hands and said, congratulations, you're my new gentleman in charge of our shipping operation. And he had gone through about 8 guys, and every one of them was willing to lie. And what this boss was really looking for was a guy he could trust with integrity, that wouldn't lie, even if his job was on the line. Ultimately, that is the cornerstone of our character and our success in life. That's good. Well, good things here. Initiative, he listened well, he's a hard worker, got good leadership skills, he respects authority, and he respects his peers. Relates well with others. All of those things are key. And I think they're key not just in Joseph's life, but I mean, write some of these down. I mean, these are good things for us. If we want to be successful in whatever our endeavors are, if we're going to start a new business, or if we're going to enter into a new field, something we've never done before, what they say is they'll train for skill, but they're going to hire for character. You know, so have the character there. And if you have the right character, the boss and the people you're working with, they'll train you for skill. All right. So he was given everything. Now, the caveat was that in end of verse 6, Joseph was well built and handsome. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. Now, how is that for subtlety? I mean, that's a little bit forward. And in summary, what is Joseph's response to her in verses 8 through 9? He says no, but why? Why does he say no?
Because Potiphar trusted him.
Right.
It all comes down to integrity. Mm-hmm. My boss has trusted me with everything. If I do this, I'm betraying my boss's trust. I can't do that. But he also says, so he says he can't betray his boss, but he also says that how can I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? Now I understand how this could be a betrayal of Potiphar, but how would that be a sin against God? Okay, and okay, all right. Anybody want to elaborate? Why would that be a sin against God? I mean, it's one of the commandments. It's one of the commandments. Yeah, you're breaking the commandments. Yeah, and sort of taking. God's given Joseph some things. He's entrusted Joseph with things. And what that would be really saying is, well, God, I know you've given me all of this, but I want this which isn't mine. And what you've given me isn't good enough. That's why it's a sin against God. It's really rejecting. And remember what it said earlier on? God's hand of blessing was on Joseph. Everything he did. If he were to sleep with this woman, would God's hand of blessing still be on him? He would lose that. If he were to do that, it would be denying that God is good. It would be not denying that God has been blessing him this whole time. Good stuff. Well, next time we're going to look at Genesis chapter 40 and take a read through that chapter. And the story took a positive turn when he ended up in Potiphar's house. Now it takes another negative turn, and he's going to be in prison. And he's going to be lost and forgotten in prison for a while. And sometimes all of us, we have situations where we have a long dry spell. we have a dark period in our life. And we're going to see Joseph in a long, dry spell, a time when he's forgotten in prison. And so read chapter 40 and bring your questions, your observations, and look forward to visiting with everybody next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This class is available in its entirety along with printed curriculum through our website. Contact us at escapefrompoverty.org or at 337-984-4858.